And the difference is DEI is an inclusive separation. It's a separation that exists to include more people in more spaces, whereas without those programs, it's exclusive by nature.
Can I posit something real quick?
Yes, you
So
can
like,
posit it.
Hey
Hey everyone, welcome back to Discourse Debrief. I'm Robert.
Blossom.
I'm Logan.
And I'm Peyton.
Before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone we have our first event of the semester, the ASUA Roundtable on March 4th. You should check it out. It'll be a great event. It'll be terrific. You get to learn more about student government and how it works. So yeah, today we have Blossom introducing our topic. Very excited to see what that is.
Yes.
You have to look it up on your phone. You had it written down.
It's like a Google search.
Or does she have, she has a whole speech ready?
Good podcast ideas.
Okay.
Okay.
So, this topic is like three-part, actually.
3 parts, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the overarching topic is DEI.
I called it. Okay. I'm so afraid. I'm sorry.
Get your
please
laptop
continue.
out and do research.
I was actually going to talk about something else, but I thought it was...
Irrelevant.
it was
It is.
relevant.
It is relevant.
So, yeah. Just, I guess to start off, what do you guys think is DEI?
Peyton.
Do you want to set us off in this?
Yes, because I will need to be doing a lot of amending. So when I first heard of DEI, all I understood it as was like hiring and like admitting quotas. So like in order to like do diversity, equity, inclusion, we just need you to add this many people of X ethnicity or culture or background to make that happen kind of inorganically. And that feels very forced to me. And so I have some reservations about that. However, up until last night, that's all I thought DEI was.
I saw the light bulb go off in your head.
Yeah.
Like in live action last night.
Yeah.
You're
So-
like, oh my God.
So I know it's more than that, but I'm
Yeah.
sure that y'all can tell me what more it entails.
Yeah, Logan, would you like to jump on that?
Sure. I'm relatively the same. I don't have like any firsthand experience with DI whatsoever. Like the extent of my knowledge is just like Harvard and admissions and whatnot. So like, Montana diversity was just like non-existent. So
Yeah.
the experiences, they aren't there. So this is a learning experience for me too.
Okay.
Diversity, equity, inclusion. I think that it's like diverse groups, diverse people. When the United States has been diverse since the beginning, really everywhere is diverse. I mean, you have a diversity of opinions, you have a diversity of religions, and now you have diversity of races, especially in the modern world with globalization. So there's that aspect. And then there's equity, which to me is equitable treatment. Everyone should be treated fairly. And then there's inclusion, which for me is inclusive spaces. Like in the United States, people deserve to have spaces where they feel safe, where they feel at home. And that's part of like why there's all those spaces for racial and ethnic minorities is because they need a space where they feel included, where they feel like they're at home.
Right.
Okay. That brings us to the next.
You don't want to tell us
Oh,
what
wait,
you
yeah, wait.
think DEI is?
I mean, yeah, sure. I could tell you guys what I think DEI is.
Or could you also do what it looks like as well? Just because I don't know.
The letters?
No.
You know your alphabet, don't you?
A, B, no, like implemented, what does that look like?
Yeah.
But, sorry.
So like Robert said, I mean, I feel like you pretty much covered everything. It's literally just that. But what it looks like is it's having cultural spaces on campus. That's that. It's having veterans being included and being like thought about in like after they're done with their service. It's having disability resources available. It's having women in the workforce. It's having pregnant women have maternity leave. So DEI looks like a lot of things. It's having, what's that thing called where like age is not like
It's not
restricted?
ageist?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
But also
yeah.
like, it's thinking about like the elderly in the community. So it's not just race-based, it's like
Yeah.
it's covering a lot of people. And I think that when people hear diversity, they immediately think about ethnicity and like
Yeah.
race, but they don't understand that diversity looks different and everybody
Yeah.
is kind of diverse
Yeah.
regardless of your
They
race.
understand it only in like a political sense.
Yeah,
Kind
they don't
of-
understand
yes.
the
Pretty
social
similar to what we
consequences of what DEI is.
Right, yeah.
So DEI implemented is not just hiring based on quotas, but it's also, I guess, making environments safer, or at least trying to make it safer, or at least trying to make it more inclusive. It's thinking about different people, like wheelchair access. How do we make this building a little more accessible for everybody to come in? So it's looking like when we have a building, we need elevators. It's looking like giving people scholarships based on, how their background. It's also thinking about people's different socioeconomic status. So that's kind of what DEI encompasses. There's a lot of it that I'm not mentioning right now off the top of my head, obviously. But
Yeah, it's a big
few
topic.
things. It is really, really large. Like, it has so many layers.
Sorry, just for some context, I feel like I personally haven't heard like the term DEI thrown around. Like, I think I first heard it maybe like late 2010s. Like, I feel like this is a pretty new thing. At least that calling it that, looping it into that acronym, is that true?
I don't know if the acronym is new, but the programs have existed
That's what I
for
thought. Okay.
forever. Like the DRC, the Disability Resource Center here on campus, that's a DEI program. For example, the SALT Center, that's a DEI program. The MLK building, that's a DEI program.
But those things have not existed for a long time too. So you're not exactly wrong. Like, the MLK building had to be fought for, and they've only
Yeah.
had it for 34 years. So that's kind of a recent
Yeah.
development. So it's only in the past like 30 years that they've had that.
Some are newer than others, for
yeah.
sure.
A lot of cultural centers are new, like Minasa, like Middle Eastern North African Affairs. That literally was not a thing until the last year and a half or so.
Okay.
So a lot of this, like, DEI programs on this campus are new, but DEI in general has existed for, I think, at least a little while after,
Yeah.
like, segregation and stuff
Yes,
like
I
that.
think it was during the Civil Rights
Yeah.
Act.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Everyone cool?
Yeah,
I think so.
makes sense.
Okay.
Baseline established.
Yeah.
We've got the floor. Now we set the ceiling, as Ted loves to say.
No.
Shout out, Ted.
We're not going to the ceiling yet.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Gotta build the walls.
Yeah, we're building walls,
Oh.
and I think we're on the second floor right now.
We got to build walls. Put the
Uh-oh.
King Trump thing back up there.
Anyway, sorry.
If you like walls, it's fine. All right. DEI in higher education. Is it unnecessary, or is it a political overreach?
Peyton.
Okay. With the caveat of me thinking DEI was quotas at first, everything you guys described, with the exception of like hiring quotas and things that are inherently inorganic to me, yeah, it's great. Like, I go to the DRC, neurodivergent gang. And like you showed us the MLK building. That's a really great place. I used to go to the Apasa Center, Asian American
Yes.
Pacific.
Asian Pacific American.
Samoan?
I don't think it's.
I don't know. But there's also the Japanese American Student Association. I would go
Yeah.
there pretty frequently. And those places are important. I recognize those. When it comes to quotas and things in higher education, I get uncomfortable about that. Not because I think it's inherently bad, I just don't think it's the greatest possible solution. Granted, all the solutions I have are much grander and perhaps naive, but we can get into those after you guys establish what you think.
Perhaps naive.
All right, Logan?
I mean, for me, like, in my view, in like a perfect world, everything is just like meritocracy. Like, if you have the credentials, you get into like higher education, whatever. But we don't live in a perfect world,
Yeah.
and I recognize like there are certain backgrounds that just don't have the opportunities that maybe I do. So I think DEI in higher education tries to compensate for that. And I think, similar to Peyton, like, I agree with the motives. I just think there's maybe a better way of going around about that, but I don't have another solution. So I would defer to someone who knows more than me.
I think that from like, if we're just thinking about this from like a political standpoint, or just in this like realm of ideas, shout out Plato, that like, yeah, we're like, okay, maybe there's a better option. This like quotas, those seem actually kind of racist in themselves because you're saying that we have to admit a certain number of people based on their race. There's a reason like why they exist, and that's
Right.
because if those quotas didn't exist, like that is the floor. And if they didn't, then historically they just wouldn't admit any students of that kind.
Right.
The same reason why there's scholarships that are specifically designated towards certain races, it's because they're disadvantaged in other scholarships. They're disadvantaged in being admitted to college in the first place, which is why there's a quota. Like, it's not saying that you have a better chance of getting in. That's the equity thing. They're trying to give you a fair chance at getting in.
I guess like I would be more motivated to tackle the issues of like why they're disadvantaged in the first place. But that's pretty unrealistic, I feel like. So.
At the same time, we think that we've made so much progress since the civil rights movement, like culturally, but the instant that Donald Trump says he's getting rid of DEI programs, for example, it's like colleges jump right on that. There's no backlash from the college administrations.
Sure.
They're so ready to be done with it. It's the same thing with like all the corporations. So to me, it doesn't feel like we've made any like social, cultural progress, which is why those programs need to exist in the first place. It's like you're giving them something to fall back on, a safety net.
Do you think, I'll ask both of you this, do you think that is that like an actual like racist motivation, or is that just like, this hurts my bottom line and it's not good for economics?
I think it can be both.
How is it not? I would have to disagree with economics.
I guess I would just be under the assumption that if you have those programs, they probably cost a lot of money, right? So by definition, if you don't have those programs, you're saving money. That I guess that's where my logic is coming from, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I mean, I guess it depends. DEI programs do fund a lot of things. So
Yeah.
yes, maybe
Okay.
it does cost some money, but I don't think that it's costing them as much money as
No, probably not. For
Yeah.
sure.
Also, they
as
have
they
enough
claim
money
to
to
be.
pay for it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
for sure, they have more than enough money. But I
Yeah.
definitely think we have this underlying cultural problem in the United States. And I wouldn't even say it's the vast majority of just like the common person has this idea. Like maybe they have it intuitively, like because of the way they were brought up, they just haven't like realized it.
Sure.
Like with a lot of like right-wing populists, maybe they don't realize that the way that they're thinking has its roots in kind of like a racist ideology. But like, getting rid of DEI programs is, that's kind of like, has its roots in like racist ideology. So I think that, like I said, it's a safety net.
Sure.
So the admissions things, maybe there is a better option, but until we make societal progress, then we're going to need a safety net. Otherwise, you're just going to get the tyranny of the majority.
Right, and it's hard for us to relate because we're not affected by it, so we can't really comprehend the.
Well, I think that we're all affected by it, like regardless of who you are, because it's like, I mean, even if you're like a straight white guy, racism hurts you too. Like it affects your mentality, it affects how you interact with the world.
Sure,
So
sure.
that harms you. Maybe not in the same like physical way where you're getting your spaces taken away from you,
Right.
but that is hurting you.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I would like to like step out of America's bubble for a second because because I feel like people only think that DEI is something that exists in America, but I'm going to take you back to my country. So, in my country, we're very, very different people because we were amalgamated when we were colonized by the British. So we are we are a country of multiple ethnicities. So over 250 ethnicities exist there, which means a lot of languages are spoken, which means we are not homogeneous in any way, right? And DEI does exist. Why? Because wherever there are people who are of different like ethnicities, backgrounds, culture, values, there is a tendency for people to like have strife and like little scuffles and try to form in groups versus out groups. Is basic human nature, right? So when people have companies, when we have government agencies, when we have civil service, they do this thing with the quota too, to make sure that you're giving everyone in your community kind of a fair chance. Now, is it really a fair chance? No. Because what that quota is really saying is we're going to give your community a quota so you can, like, if you're the best of the best in your community, you can come work for us. That's basically what DEI is doing. DEI is not giving you a fair chance against other ethnicities. It's giving you a fair chance against other people of your own ethnicity.
Oh.
So I don't think that it's giving anyone like...
Another patent light bulb
Yeah.
So that's how I saw it in my community. That's what I. So when I saw it in America, I'm like, of course it makes sense. You guys need it on a bigger scale because you have historically harmed a lot of these other people in your community. While we have like fought and scuffled, and we can like be like, yeah, at least I'm not you, but we don't have the history of real like.
We have scientific racism here.
Yeah, we don't have that like really like bad blood history, but we still have those programs to prevent those things, to make sure that we're still like thinking of people. So if you step outside of America's bubble, a lot of places do have DEI. We don't call it DEI in my country. It's not talked about like that. We just know as they're hiring like basis. That's what they think about. So yeah, so stepping outside of America's bubble, America is not the only country in the world that does these things. So America, when people are like, oh my God, DEI, we're the only place, that's not true. A lot of countries, a lot of like places have DEI. They don't call it diversity, equity, inclusion. Nobody's thinking about that.
Yeah.
Kind of an idea I just had based off of that is like, I think that one reason why, like up until of course I knew how much more was encompassed by it, I was hesitant about DEI, specifically its implementations, is because that quota thing rubs me the wrong way for that similar kind of reason. I mean, not only is it like, could be argued, although its justifications are good, as like a reverse like racism, even though I wouldn't go that far. It's still to a degree like a separating kind of thing, specifically the quotas, right? Like they're making you pick between two different kinds of people, and that's going to be inherently separating.
But that's what interviews are in the first place.
You
can argue that everything that we do is inherently like that.
Yeah.
And I think No, go on. When people talk about like these things, when you make spaces like this is segregation, I mean, your entire country, it was like that.
Well, I was building up
to
a greater point.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
About like the admissions thing, where you're saying that like it's setting people up like, it's going to be one against the other, right? And since there's a quota to meet, that means that they're going to have to fill that quota. So maybe someone who better deserves that seat is going to lose that seat because of a quota. Is what I think is implied by the whole. Your people are being set up, and then there's a quota. But like admissions is competitive, and the way that admissions works for higher education is schools pick who they think is going to succeed the best academically, which disadvantages people who are poor because they think they won't be able to make it through college. It disadvantages people from certain communities because they think they don't have the same work ethic. So those quotas exist just because, like, maybe it's not a fair chance, but it is at least a chance because, like, maybe you wouldn't get in otherwise without that quota, but does that mean you don't deserve a chance?
No, yeah, that part of quotas, like the why it's implemented, why it's there, I understand. I'm not saying, like, even, like, meritocracy to smart people, like I'm not advocating for that, but just the very principle of setting up a dichotomy, I feel like is at least on like the individual, like you're the person in like administration who's like making this call, like you're gonna have to constantly be thinking like, oh, there's a very real race separation here.
Well,
and that's important to recognize, don't get me wrong, but at the same time,
I think that the difference is between having those programs and not having those programs is that either way there's going to be a separation that people are going to realize, and the difference is DEI is an inclusive separation. It's a separation that exists to include more people in more spaces, whereas without those programs, it's exclusive by nature.
Can I posit something real quick?
Yes,
so like thank you. As like maybe a middle ground, and maybe this is like more a complaint against higher education itself, not like strictly DEI or quotas. But like, say you have those two people, and your quota means you have to admit so and so, X instead of Y. Why can't we just admit both? Like, why do we have to admit someone at the expense of someone else? Like, regardless of if it's for a quota or for it's like, again, this is more a complaint.
Agree, but that's like a ground up foundational thing.
Right. Like, it's more a complaint on higher education in itself. So, but what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, who's telling you that they're going to do that? I feel like a lot of people have this false perception that quotas mean someone's losing out. Or like,
yeah, I mean, like, maybe we could think about it as like maybe nobody is losing their seat. Maybe there's just more seats being added.
Exactly. Like I feel like we forget that this universities, not just universities, but any corporation, is still unless you're not talking about profit, they're still very profit minded.
Yeah.
I don't think they would want to, if they think they're going to lose money, I don't think they would be doing this thing in the first place. But yeah.
Well, sorry, the one point I was building towards, but I never quite got there.
Sorry, my fault.
No, you're fine. That was an important sidetrack. But I hear the phrase DEI, and I hear some, after this conversation, quotas aren't all that bad. But nonetheless, I still have like some kind of, it feels a little uncomfortable.
We'll get you at the end of the semester debate.
I know. But a little teaser, by the way, for our topic at the end of the year. But nonetheless, why is it important that we loop them all under an umbrella term of DEI? Do you think that that's more impactful and like the greater goal of, implementing those things in our life, or is putting a label on it somehow harming that process or somehow diminishing it by looping all these different kinds of strategies under one umbrella?
I think that has more to do with political rhetoric than anything else.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
That's my opinion.
Well, in our country, that's all we have.
Well, it's like also, I don't know, like when affirmative action started to first be argued about in political spheres, that's how they referred to it. They're like, this is affirmative action instead of what it really means. And it's the same with DEI. They're not saying diversity, equity, inclusion whenever they say these things. And when we hear diversity in America, it's almost like a dirty word these days. But yeah, I feel like the way that it's talked about in the political sphere is very rhetorical. Like, that's why lots of people, most Americans, don't even understand what DEI is. They don't realize that, like handicap resources, veteran centers, those are DEI programs. When women and gender resource programs, those are DEI programs.
You say like some medical programs or even?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's that very reason that like, y'all know I love words. I love what they mean. I love what they entail. But when we start doing big umbrella terms like this, I feel like the more we have under that umbrella, the easier it'll be for people to find little things to be uncomfortable with and discredit the entire thing. Like I literally did, right?
I think that's that's like exactly
yeah,
the
that's the strategy. But like, I mean, the counter to that is just more dialogue.
So are you guys saying that DEI was an acronym created by people in opposition of that?
I don't know I don't know who created it or when they created it, to be honest. I just know that the way that they use it is they use it as a dirty word, the same way, like, we all know what diversity means. But when, like, someone goes up on stage and they're railing against diversity, it means whatever they want it to mean in that context.
Yeah, I guess, like, the one comparison I have to this is, y'all are going to love this, woke. That word, right? And of course, DEI, I think
liberal.
Yeah. Sorry, commenter. Thank you for commenting, though. We appreciate that channel interaction. But nonetheless, I hear woke and
licking the boot that kicks him.
Hey, whatever gets his views. But
yeah, go on.
Even though DEI, I think, is much more organized, much better and streamlined in its like strategies, wokeism, again, similar kind of principle in that we have a group of people who are disenfranchised and we want them to be better represented, diversity, equity.
I think that
inclusion.
wokeism is like, I wouldn't even like put them under the same, like wokeism is just like basically like a Reddit term, honestly. In my
Well, it
opinion.
didn't start that way, right?
I mean, it started as a cultural term, like to be woke, and then it turned into like just more political rhetoric to the point where I don't even think it means anything now, to be honest.
No, it doesn't.
Well,
it
now
means
it
what
doesn't.
you want it to mean.
Yeah.
Literally.
But like I think we can fairly grant that like at its core, at least like early woke before it got turned into whatever the hell Elon made it, and DEI, the same underlying principle there is we have people who are being excluded, not treated fairly, and we want to do something about that. But DEI did a lot better, I would say, whereas woke kind of didn't have that centralized kind of goal or message.
There wasn't like programs that were branched under like wokeism.
Yeah, exactly.
But DEI is like actual measures.
Okay.
Go on.
We completely hijacked your episode, by the way.
That's good because I think that's building up to like the next.
Is this the ceiling?
This is the second floor.
Okay.
Second floor.
We have one more until the ceiling. So like after this, then there's the ceiling.
Awesome. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it.
So DEI, is this kind of impeding on academic free speech? Are we like is inclusivity in the campus, in higher education, whatever, is it kind of dampening academia? Is it dampening academic free speech? Is it?
I think it's not dampening free speech. I don't know if you guys will have an opposite opinion on this, but I mean, it's like what I love to say, like left-wing populism or like left-wing socially progressive ideas are inclusive by nature, even if like, you know, there's still that idea of being against an elite. It's inclusive of diversity inherently. So it includes more people, and maybe like that excludes some people because obviously there's still an in-group being formed. I think there always will be. But I don't know. I feel like if anything, it adds to free speech. It gives you a space to present your ideas where you know you can do it safely.
I might actually like agree. Like I just instinctually think the more voices you have in a group that are different, that's just like that's
Better.
exactly what free speech and like expression is.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I just fully agree. No, yeah.
We were waiting for it.
No, yeah. Yeah, the more voices, I mean, it could even be argued, like, if you have more voices there, then people are going to want to respond to those voices, and that's going to just perpetuate more ideas, more speech than would have otherwise been there. So, yeah, diversity is always a good free speech
Let
thing.
me tweak this a little bit,
Okay.
because you're all agreeing.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Let me
So-
make you
I'm
guys
about to
fight.
get kicked down the
She's
stairs.
just pitting us against each other.
No, I'm not. I'm just like, changing a little wording of the topic. So
Poor Peyton.
you all say like DEI makes it like it doesn't impede free speech.
Yeah.
But what if DEI inherently means you can't like say some things? Like in the recent years, before like this year, like a couple months ago, calling people slurs.
Mm-hmm.
Because we start talking about being more inclusive, being more fair, being more conscious of people's race and backgrounds and religion, that's been kind of frowned upon. Being conscious of all these things and also like conscious of women's rights also meant like men could just outrightly make sexist jokes.
Yeah.
Even if they were just jokes, they couldn't outrightly just say things in their classrooms because, it would offend someone.
Yeah.
Are we impeding? They couldn't also maybe, I don't know, teach things in a certain way if some people wanted to.
Yeah.
Is that impeding on academic integrity?
I
Is
think,
it impeding on free speech?
Yes and no.
Bro's nuanced.
Shout out Aaron for
Can you-
teaching me yes
can you
and no. But
elaborate?
yes and no, because it does impede free speech in a way, because you're not free to say whatever you want. But like the other thing is, we've never had unlimited free speech, and it's never been an idea that we should have unlimited free speech. We want productive speech. We want speech that doesn't harm anyone, and we want speech that doesn't shut down or overtake other speech that is productive.
Mm-hmm.
Calling someone a slur isn't productive, and it never will be.
Right.
And if anything, and on the one hand, it harkens back to days where there was lynchings, where we had like violent racism as opposed to this more like covert racism. So there's that, but also certain speech, like hate speech, it hastens that progression towards violence. Like that's where it begins, is with speech, and then speech becomes action. So yes, it does impede speech, but I think that it's basically the policy of the United States to impede non-productive, hateful, harmful speech.
I guess I'll compare it to, like, I'll say it really doesn't impede free speech, and I'll compare it to these nut jobs that are on campus all the time, where that have signs that like say God hates U of A. Like everybody hates them. They're not. No one likes them for it, but they're not like in prison for saying stuff like
Should
that.
be.
I agree, but they're not. So I'd say like that's not impeding free speech, even though it's atrocious.
One thing that I'm reminded of, just last night I was doing a reading for my neuroethics class where we talk about like the
Shout out
relationship
neuroethics.
Shout out neuroethics. Where we're basically reading about how different like systems of the mind may or may not be strictly internal or also interact with the real world, and the whole like premise of the textbook is that there's this thing called the ethical parity principle, and with that it basically means that everything morality is weird. I'll just put it at that. But one little sub thing,
Immanuel Kant.
one little sub thing that we looked at when talking about like speech and memories is this thing. I think it was John Stuart Mill coined it. It's called the Hurt principle. Are you familiar with the Hurt principle?
Yeah.
It's basically people should be able to do what they want as long as their actions aren't hurting others. And I think that's my view on free speech. Now, we could argue that if somebody's like saying racist things to themselves, it could lead to them reinforcing ideas that lead to them doing actions. So like there's obviously nuance there, but I think generally...
right to privacy, though.
Right to privacy, yeah. But generally, no, it's the hurt principle in action.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with you guys that I agree with Robert, actually. We've never, had unlimited free speech. I know that this is going to sound really grainy to a lot of people, but it's just true. You're not free to do whatever you want. You might think you are, but it's just that you're not.
Fellow hard determinist spotted. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
Social contract. Shout out Rousseau.
There's just things that impede you. There's laws that impede you from doing whatever you want. I mean, if we all had free reign to say whatever we wanted and do whatever we wanted, the world would be in chaos and it would end immediately.
Anarchy.
So, yeah, it would be total anarchy. And so just having a program that's just making you more conscious of what you do say just makes you an empathetic human being.
That's true.
It forces you to really think about the consequences of your actions rather than just how you feel in the moment. So
It's sad, though, that we have to be forced to do that, though.
yeah.
Well, yeah, in a way, yeah. But I don't know. It's basically like at the end of the day, is your speech productive? And if it isn't, then someone impeding or hindering that speech doesn't really hinder free speech because it's not hindering like the marketplace of ideas.
Well,
because at the end of the day, if you're saying something that doesn't contribute to that marketplace, then if someone hinders that speech, they're not hindering the marketplace by keeping that speech out of the sphere.
would you say, and this is like getting off topic, but would you say like just saying, exercising free speech in itself, is that not like productive from like an American values standpoint?
No, I don't, because there's plenty of kinds of speech that aren't productive, like yelling fire in a crowded theater isn't productive at all. And that's been established by the Constitution and the Supreme Court several times. The same with like hate speech, shouting like slurs or shouting like, I'm going to kill you because of your race. That's not productive. Like, what does that get us?
Right.
That's true.
No, I agree.
But if that's the thing, you can be racist. You have free speech to be racist. You could be like, I'm racist because X, Y, Z. And like that speech is protected because it's considered to be productive because you're able to have a dialogue. But if you're just like, no, you're not helping.
If you say I don't like you because X, Y, Z, and I think you're X, Y, Z, unfortunately your speech is also protected.
Yeah.
But there are some kinds of like words and framing that's just
Too much.
unnecessary.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
sometimes keep it to yourself, keep it in the house.
Shout out Mel.
Shout out, man.
But now that we have established all of those things, I would like to reference something that was said by Logan earlier on.
Uh-oh.
Oh, God.
Because when you mentioned
You're
it,
pulling up my tweets.
you had
She's got the receipts.
when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, he's talking about the roof of the building, but we haven't like even built the house. Now we've built the house, and we're laying the roof. It's something that you mentioned. You ready?
I'm like shaking right now. That's a terrible noise.
That's a terrible noise. I'm so sorry.
I forgive you.
Go for it.
Diversity versus meritocracy.
Oh, here we go.
Ooh.
Do you think that diversity means that people don't have those merits?
Can
Do you
I
think
have Logan define meritocracy? Because he's the one who
Yes.
brought it up first.
that you can
I
define
guess
it?
I'll ground this as like far down as I can. So like in general, in like a just society, people do what they are best equipped to do. So like someone who is educated in medicine should be a doctor. Someone who knows how to fly a plane should be a pilot, right? Like people should do what they are best equipped to do. That's how I define meritocracy, I guess.
So,
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Why should people do that? To what end?
Because it makes sense. Okay,
do you think
Is it like they
to
enjoy
eat-
doing it,
do
or
you
it's for the
think-
good of the people, or what?
I guess like for the production of like society, economy.
So do you think to each person what they need from each person according to their ability? Because it sounds like that's exactly what you're advocating for. That is the most productive form of society.
I mean, in a perfect world.
Shout
Sure.
out Marx, I guess.
Like I just
you can just bite the bullet and say in principle, yeah.
you know what? Yeah, probably blanketly agree with that, although I'm not educated enough within that,
Yeah.
principle to have an actual opinion.
Okay.
But going back to like, people should generally do like what they are best equipped to do.
I love that you said that because now there's 2 subtopics within this roof.
Okay.
There's pillars.
There's a chimney.
There's a chimney. There's like we might even have an upper basement.
A
It's gonna be
skylight.
great, Yeah.
An attic.
But I think I would like to have all of you actually. You already defined what
Sure.
meritocracy means. What you guys think meritocracy means?
Me first.
Yeah.
The people with the most merits, according to whatever position they are applying for, should get that job, is what meritocracy is. Which is one of the foundations of populist democracies is meritocracy, where it's like you shouldn't have people based on their credentials, you should have people based on their ability.
Yeah, I'm not very comfortable with meritocracy. I would give that same definition, but the question I'm asking myself, which I don't have answers for, and I kind of tried to get out of you, is why? To what end?
Yeah.
Is it for the good of the people? Is it for that individual to like reach their own personal level of satisfaction, if it even matters?
That's like under the working assumption that people have their expertise because it's like something they enjoy doing.
Yeah. Back to the prompt though. Can I
Yeah,
address
go on.
this? I take issue with the prompt because the inference that like diversity means there's not I'm not
Exactly.
meritocratic by any means, but that inference that diversity means there's no meritocracy or there's no merits happening there is like inherently flawed. So yeah.
That's good. That's good because that was going to be the next segue. But there's also something else to talk about. When you define meritocracy, I think, Rob, you mentioned credentials, and the rest of you mentioned ability. What really is the merit? Is it the person with the with the best degree for the job? The person with the best attitude for the job? Is it a combination of both? The person with the best face for the job? The person with the best outlook for the job? The person who makes the people comfortable? Because I think sometimes we have someone might not encompass all. I think some people look like they're suited for a job just because of what people are used to. Sometimes people look like the person that can calm the public. Like sometimes the public wants a friendly face when it comes to a job, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the person best
That's
suited
best.
for the job.
I'll just say, and like this is a cop out. It's not my place to decide that. Like
That is a cop out. I'll give a real answer. Shout out Andrew Jackson for American meritocracy.
Oh.
But like I said, I don't believe in meritocracies, but they are populist by nature, and they fall into the classic pitfall of like any systems argument is who decides and how do you decide.
Right.
Because it's like you can say we have a meritocracy, but who decided your merits and how were those merits decided?
Sure.
So it is a pitfall. That's why I said shout out Andrew Jackson, because that's considered like the first meritocratic, I guess, presidency. And the reason it was considered that is because it wasn't people with the most credentials. It wasn't, career politicians he was appointing. Like, if you like had a plan of action and then you executed it, that was considered like you had the merits for the job.
I'm really happy with that framing because I think actually I was going to say something. I think I'm wrong though. I'm a very individualist person. Like I view everything on interpersonal relationships, which Robert and I know a lot about from a class.
Apparently not.
But yeah, so it's very easy for me to like recognize all of those lists because I'm thinking like an individual boss who's like in a company, knows how it works, knows what he's looking for, and of course he's going to be informed by that environment. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a single person or making these kinds of decisions.
Exactly.
So. And there's going to be different kinds of merits, and I think it is probably impossible for somebody to encompass all of them.
Do you think that it's up to the boss then, like to decide on the merits?
Well, as a hard determinist, I would say it's all circumstance and things. But if we're trying to ground things,
as
be
a
a
capitalist,
be a little more practical. I mean, there are a bunch of motivations. It could be past experience. Could be money. Is money. Could be.
But it's the boss who makes that determination, or. Is there some
probably the hiring manager or
but who selects the hiring manager? That's the pitfall I was
Just a
talking about.
box.
Well, that's why I'm a hard determinist. I take
Okay.
that to
Yeah, the
radical
hard determinist is
extremes.
a cop-out to answering the question, though.
Well, it's how I ended up so individualistic because you realize that. I guess this kind of sorry, it's a bit of a sidetrack, but this is like the core of
Sorry,
like
No, you're good. I'm just-
my like ideology for how I frame change in things because I personally believe that like there's always a cause, there's always an influence for an influence, for an influence, for an influence. It's important to recognize that that pattern exists, but at the end of the day, we're going to be one thing is going to make the decision. I think one boss is going to make the decision.
Mhm.
It's important to factor in every single influence so that we can better understand why they're there and why they might make that decision.
I can agree with that.
But that's where I think it's my role, recognizing those influences to maybe introduce myself and be a new influence and see if I can maybe change
but
that
to
mind.
ground that in the discussion, like I can grant you all of that. It's just my point with the meritocracies is you can recognize all those things and then recognize it's an individualist thing. The boss has to make these determinations or the hiring manager or whoever. But at the end of the day, you can't have a true meritocracy because someone has to select the boss in the
Oh, of
first
course.
place.
Right.
Yeah.
So like it is an individualist thing, but every individual has different opinions.
Yeah, this is also not a meritocratic
Yes.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone has diversity in their opinions.
Amen.
I guess we can maybe expand this, and then we'll hand the reins back to you.
Steal your
Let's
topic.
expand this like on a political sense. So if we're not saying meritocracy,
Yeah.
how do we decide who has the rule of law, who runs society?
This is a whole.
I know, but it's so interesting.
actually
to
You
me.
know
gonna
what?
cop out
It's
of this
it's
one.
Robert's topic next week.
Yeah, I'm
It's a good. You know what? We can bottle this up and
let's
save
wait.
it for later.
I'd rather not open this can of worms.
I'm good with that. We need
Awesome.
a whole other time period for that.
So you would rather not discuss that question?
His question, yes.
We'll,
yeah.
we'll save it for
Okay.
later.
That's like an hour long.
Yeah, that's
discussion.
it.
Okay. So we've established the meritocratic, whatever that word is.
It's a rough one.
Yeah.
It's like a Scrabble word.
Meritocratic principle
Awesome.
versus the diversity principle, whatever that is. And I would just like to cite the California fire director, the fire service director, for this next topic that probably will close out the entire section.
Okay.
So, what California fires happen,
Mhm.
wildfires, there's really nothing they can do to stop the fires.
Yeah.
They can manage it. And people immediately, when she comes out, they immediately go, DEI hire. That's why these
Mhm.
fires are going on, because, she's a woman of color. But when we cite her background, she has over 20 years in service. She has multiple degrees. She has trained multiple people. She's been doing this her entire life, every single certificate you can imagine that you need to be in that position, she has them. Do you think that meritocracy, at least in America, is probably rooted in racism? That no matter how far people, even if we didn't have diversity, do you think that they would still think that the best person for the job is someone of a different skin color?
I
Can
think.
can I tackle this first?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't even think it's a question of meritocracy. I think people are just like racist.
Yeah.
Because like,
Yeah.
like it's the same with like pilots. Like if there's some people, if they see a black pilot, they're just like inherently nervous.
Mhm.
But if it's a white pilot, like they're just fine.
Even
Like,
though white
that doesn't
pilots
make
cause
sense.
more accidents, like by far.
So I don't even think it's a question of meritocracy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, we don't have a meritocracy now. And, like, if we had, like, a pure meritocracy where it's, like, you're selected based on your abilities purely, then it would be diverse. Like, it would be naturally diverse because, diversity means there's more people means more abilities.
So you're saying that meritocracy and diversity are not in conflict inherently?
At the purest form, no, they're not in conflict.
That's
Yeah,
good.
there's going to be something driving a wedge between those two things, and it's going to be the racism.
Yeah,
right?
if that's a cultural thing, not a, obviously the culture influences the system, which is why we don't have meritocracy.
Okay, so I guess closing points, anybody?
Yeah. How do we wrap this up?
Closing statements.
Any closing statement, closing thoughts?
You
What
all
comes
just
to your
heard.
mind? Do we think that
Great country. It's going swimmingly. No more DEI.
It's the best country. It's the best country in the
actually,
world.
before we wrap up,
Actually.
We just gave her an idea.
what's next for the diversity on the U of A campus?
Ooh.
Not just U of A campus, but maybe America as a whole.
We're cooked, chat.
Before you answer, this could be a great cliffhanger for our end of year event that we're still working.
Oh, that's
with the kinks
true.
For
You guys should come to our end of year event where you can hear all about the future of DEI on campuses.
yeah,
That's what it's about?
Yeah.
It is about DEI
he missed
on
he missed the
campuses.
meeting.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
Well, now you know. But
Are
wait,
we
you could have
finished?
asked after. We're not recording right now.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's like a perfect segue to get people to go to our events.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna leave it at cliffhanger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you guys spell segue SEGUE or SEGWAY?
Those are two different words, aren't there?
Yes.
It's the first way, right?
Yes, it is the
Okay.
first way.
Isn't WAY like a...
I was testing your
motor
English
vehicle
ability.
device?
Yes, it is a motor vehicle device.
I don't know why I said that.
I
so,
knew that
like-
from Mall Cop. Shout out Mall Cop. All right, let's.
Paul Blart.
Can we get him on?
Amazing topic.
Yes, that
I'm-
was great.
At
I'm really
first,
happy we did
after,
that.
after last night, I was genuinely afraid that I was going to get flamed, and rightly so.
I don't think you did though.
I didn't. Yeah, this is an insanely good conversation. I certainly feel more comfortable with the topic and sharing it with others. So yeah, great for your first topic.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Knocked it out of the
Don't
park.
sound so surprised.
You have a high bar.
This is a meritocracy, after all.
Yeah, I go here with my own
Accuracy.
merit.
This is an oligarchy, and we appoint people.
This is an oligarchy. Cliffhanger
Anyway,
for next
sorry.
week.
That's what I was saying. Yeah,
Oh my God, I
the
know
bar
what
has been
topic
set
it is.
high
Yeah.
for you, Robert, for your first
Oh, don't worry.
topic. Oh, I'm worrying now.
I think everyone will disagree with each other on my topic.
Excellent.
Now I'm excited.
I love it.
Yeah.
But
right.
am I good to do the outro?
Go for
Or
it.
Go
would
for
you
it.
like to do it?
No, I think
Okay. We're still building
You
up
put
to
the
it.
no copyright sounds music on first.
Pokemon.
If
That's my job.
if it's not copywritten, can we do the Fat Rat Unity song?
That definitely is copywritten. Copywritten? Copywrote?
It's copyrighted, but I say copywritten.
It's copyrighted.
I hate it.
That's
I hate it. I say
that's a
copyrighted.
falsehood.
Anywho,
I'll find something.
thank you for watching episode 4.
It's
Oh, it's
4.
already 4. Damn, episode 4 of the Discourse
Oh.
Debrief.
Cat.
Go on.
Season 2. It's been fun. We're going to have more topics, more events coming, like we said. By the time this episode comes out, I think it'll be a few days up until our first event of the semester,
Yeah.
ASUA Presidential Roundtable. Really excited for that. But yeah, I have been Peyton,
I'm Logan.
Blossom.
Robert.
and we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.